Hello, we are Grocery Guys. I am Bill Wilson. I am here with Tim Inkelbarger, and we are ready for episode 3. We are going to kick things off here with a 5 things item that I wrote last Friday. So every Friday, as a staff, we pick 5 stories, unique grocery stories. And it's usually a pretty well-read section. So I'm just going to some of them are humorous, and I got a humorous one from Dollar General, so I was just going to kick it off with a little 5 things humor here. So the title is, You Still Need to Pay for That. Still need to pay for that, Tim.
You're talking about Amazon just walk out?
That's right. They're just walk out technology. Okay. A going out of business sale does not mean shoppers help the store actually go out of business. But a few of them actually tried to do just that during a Dollar General 50% off Final Days extravaganza in Pritchard, Alabama. The owner had to call the police because things were getting out of hand and people were actually walking away with items without paying. One patron became disruptive and was told to leave the store or go to jail. All the craziness forced the store to close temporarily in order to restore the sanity. The store did reopen, and we are sure there was more chaos because, I mean, come on, 50% off at Dollar General. And that's practically free stuff, right, Tim?
That's like 50 cents for everything.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, 50 cents.
I'm no mathematician here, but...
That's good math right there, right? That was pressure math, too, so I'm impressed.
Yeah, thank you.
But all was kept under control. Dollar General did announce during its last earnings call it would shutter around 100 stores in the coming months. Let's hope those closings go more smoothly.
It's like a Black Friday sale or something when Dollar General sells everything.
Although I think they don't, as we know, not everything is for $1 anymore there. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I do like your 50-cent logic. That's appropriate for this conversation.
I do get annoyed when I go to the dollar store and I buy something for like $3.
Yeah, right. I went to a dollar store, and it was the only store in the town. It's where my daughter and son train. It's in Genoa. And I went in there, and lots of things were priced around $3, $4, $5. And I'm like, are they taking advantage because it's the only store in the area?
Interesting.
That's crazy.
Right. Where's the class action lawsuit? I'm sure someone has tried that at some point, right?
Oh, we're Americans. That's what we do,
we're
right?
Americans. Yeah, it says Dollar General.
I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but I still think Dollar General should do merch drops like Aldi. I think they would make a killing.
They would. $1 at a time. You know,
or 50 cents at a time.
Or 50 cents at a time if it's going out of business. I'm a big fan of merch drops, as you know. We've talked about it. I said I was not going to bring it up again, but, but you're the one who brought it up this time. So, yeah, I would love a Dollar General cowboy hat or like something like that. It would just be fun.
Let's go with the cowboy boots too, man. Why stop at the hat?
Yeah, totally. A whole Dollar General
pop gun.
That would be
holster
incredible.
And a pop gun. Come on.
Yeah, slip and slide.
Okay. We're going to go to the meat counter right away. The meat of the matter, we're going to talk about the food traceability rule. And if you have not been paying attention, I'm sure you have, the FDA has pushed back the deadline for the food traceability rule. It was originally January 2026. Now it's 2028. I do not believe they specified a date. They just said 2028. Or a month, for that matter.
They should have just said election season 2028.
Yeah,
because I think that's right around where it's going to drop. We're going to be listening to candidates. So I wondered about why. 2.5 years. That's pretty arbitrary, I think. Right? I mean, but it's huge. Yeah, it's interesting.
I do have to say, it's a mess. The food traceability rule is a mess right now. I know that some grocers have gone out in front of it, and so I'm not going to take anything away from them. But there are a majority of grocers that I think just don't know what to do. It's so complex that they're just like, where do we even begin?
Right.
But I am going to say something about what was mentioned, and it's a story that you did. The FMI, the president and CEO, Leslie Saracen, came out with a statement about pushing it back to 2028. And this person said, while additional time is critical for efficient implementation across all sectors, we also strongly believe FDA should re examine certain aspects of the rule to provide flexibility for the industry to improve traceability without unnecessarily burdening the supply chain and increasing food costs to consumers. So you have the FMI coming out, the Food Institute, saying you have to rework some of this rule. It's not just a matter of pushing it back to 2028. There's a lot more that needs to be done.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'm sure like getting down into the nitty gritty gets pretty boring and granular. Not that this is not already kind of a boring topic, but it's interesting when you look at things like these massive recalls that have happened. The thing that I thought, and before you're the expert on this, so I really want to listen to you. But like the thing that I saw when it was delayed, when they gave it a 2.5 year delay, is, and I never really thought about this, is like it's only as good as the weakest link, right? So like when you're talking about supply chain stuff, just because Hy-Vee gets into compliance or just because Albertsons gets into compliance, if anybody along the food chain is not in compliance, then they're out of compliance too. It has to be like a solid system that everybody is participating in. Otherwise, there's a breakdown, and that's the whole point, right?
There are so many levels and components to this. You mentioned the levels. I mean, it basically starts from where it is produced on the farm all the way to where it's, put out on the show floor for the supermarkets. So how many hands does it pass before it gets to that point to the grocery store? A half a dozen, maybe? I mean, that's crazy.
Right.
And
if it's coming from outside of the country too, maybe even more,
yes,
right?
Yes. Yeah, and that brings up a whole entirely new element when you're dealing with cargo from overseas. They have a hard time keeping up with everything that's coming in. In fact, I would say they only track, I mean, I'm talking about products in general, not just supermarket products, products in general that come into the country. A fraction of those are actually checked. This is a hot news story. I published this today. And when it comes to accessing real-time data in the supply chain, grocers are lost right now. They don't have that capability. So that's a big part of this food traceability rule.
Well, it's gotten so complex, and I think a lot of this has to do with, just trade in general becoming more complex over the last 20 or 30 years. It used to be that you couldn't necessarily go to every store in town and buy avocados. Now you can. Like especially when it comes to like produce and things like that, they're coming from all over the place. You're not even sourcing avocados from the same places or even the same states or countries sometimes. So it gets increasingly complex in that way, I think.
And, the big retailers, they got this. The Krogers, the Hy-Vees, the Albertsons, Walmarts, they already got, I mean, Walmart is already deep into it. They're way ahead of everyone else.
Right.
But when you talk about these small independent grocers, I mean, these are the guys that are also going to have to do exactly what these big Krogers are doing. And the cost alone, Tim, let's talk about the cost of setting this up and really implementing it. What I'm looking at is the cost for a small to medium-sized business, on average, is for the first year of compliance is $22,000. And when you're talking about a small grocer, what is that percentage of their total revenue for the year?
Right. It's not chump change here, especially when you get to the smaller players, for sure. And I know that there are a lot of tech companies, maybe not a lot, but there are tech companies that are popping up to try to deal with this or help bring those costs down or make it more affordable, even for the smaller players. I'm going to be going to Altitude about a week from now, a little over a week from now. Or no, it'll be this coming Sunday. Altitude is put on by Upshop, which is a tech company that does a lot of inventory management work. And, they're big into AI and tech, and they just partnered with Repositrack, which is a company that deals with supply chain networks. So it's sort of like Upshop's the front end, Repositrack's the back end. And, perhaps with this extension, I've wondered if companies like Upshop and others who are doing this kind of work right now, it gives them a little bit of time to even further bring down those costs of implementation, right? Because at the end of the day, these companies are going to have to pay something, and they really should. I mean, ultimately, it's about safety, but there are other concerns too. I was talking to Mike Weber at the NRF convention, and this is right after they partnered with Repositrack, and he said something really interesting. It's not just about food safety; it's an environmental issue, because his point being is that if you have a cantaloupe or some cantaloupes in California, I think was his example, that go bad or have issues and they need to be recalled, and you can't track them back to the source, you have to destroy every cantaloupe and every farm in the state, and it can be a huge environmental issue, just in terms of the destruction of what is largely perfectly good food, but you just can't tell if it's the good one or the bad one, so you destroy all of it. So, it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and you mentioned food recalls, and that's one thing where the traceability rule is going to be greatly beneficiary, is with food recalls, because like you said, they can pinpoint exactly where it happened, when it occurred, even more fine-tuned than what they do now. So that's a good thing. But let's talk about what you'll need, the staff members you'll need to hire to comply with the food traceability rule. At least one person you will need to hire in the following categories. IT, got to hire someone in IT. You got to hire someone in legal and or regulatory. You have to hire someone in food safety. You have to hire someone in supply chain. You have to hire at least one person in operations. You have to hire at least one person in warehouse. You have to hire at least one person in store management. And you have to hire one person in supplier management. That's a long list. And those are a lot of salaries that you're going to have to up. And I'm assuming that some grocery stores are they're not going to hire anyone additionally. They're just going to increase the role of certain people at these stores, don't you think?
I would think that a lot of them will not have an option. They'll have to do that because like we've already seen, at least with big companies lately, there's been a pullback on, corporate positions, essentially. I mean, we've seen it at Albertsons and Kroger this year and others that are already cutting staff. So to hire more because of this regulation seems pretty unlikely. And tell me about this, because it's my understanding that the regulation is in place already.
Yes.
It's just not required yet. So
Correct.
there is an expectation that you're conforming to this, right?
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. The other thing is, it's not clear about any kind of punishment as well from the FDA. If you're caught, not taking part in this, or you're missing a link, there's nothing that says, hey, you're going to have to shut your operations down or anything. It's one of those rubber type of a rule where it's like, nobody knows what's going to happen. I'm sure you'll get written up, and maybe so many write-ups will lead to a fine, but they have not really outlined the repercussions of not participating as well. So here's the top concerns that are coming from grocers. One is the cost and the complexity of the implementation. So we've covered kind of that. And this is the complexity, because there are so many stages and phases of this rule that it's hard for A, knowing them all, and B, all of them going right, at any given time. Data integrity and accuracy. You're a technology guy. I know that you're big on data. I'm assuming that artificial intelligence is going to help with this rule, but the data, the data, I mean, grocers are already looking at so much data right now, and now you're going to be compounding it with all of this food traceability data. Do you think something like AI is going to help out here?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully so. I would hope that that might be a decent use of it. I mean, it can identify patterns that a normal person wouldn't be able to find. So perhaps it would be useful. I know that groups like Repositrack and Upshop are already using AI to better manage inventory. So I would suppose that most grocers are going to use it too.
Another concern is timeline and compliance, which we've talked about. They push the timeline back, which is good, but they're still in really the beginning phases and when it comes to compliance. That's just my general take on it. And there are a lot of resources out there. I know National Grocers Association, they've had educational guides on the rule. I think there's been webinars out there done. So there is a vast supply of education out there that grocers can use, which is good. So I don't think there's been a lack of information out there or a lack of education.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and one of the other things that sort of came to mind when you were talking about the cost of all of this, which it is a heavy lift for especially small and maybe regional grocers. But I think the other thing to consider is the potential reputational damage that you face if there's a recall like this. I mean, I'm not going to name names, but I know of some grocery chains that were very closely connected to Boar's Head. They really promoted them hard in their deli products and things like that. Had the big signs, and Boar's Head had a big presence. So when that outbreak happened, I think it was listeria and killed a bunch of people. I think, what was it, like 10 people died? You were pretty close on that one too.
Yes. I believe it was 10. I believe it was 10 who
I think it was 10. Yeah. But when that kind of thing happens, like, how much is the reputational cost? And that's something that they need to consider as well.
I'm wondering if it would be beneficial if the federal government would play a role in this for some of these smaller independent stores and provide grants or money to help fund for this. I can't imagine a neighborhood store, and I believe there has to be a certain amount of stores to qualify for the rule, but still, you're looking at some small operations. I can't imagine how they're going to really launch this financially.
Right, right. Well, I mean, don't hold your breath. That would be my advice
I
on
know,
the idea of
exactly.
like government grants, just because of the way, we're
Yeah.
operating now under the new Trump administration. They're pulling back on regulations and government money for those kinds of programs to begin with. So 2.5 years from now, I think we're going to be living in a very different world where the government has a lot less to do with helping out in these kinds of efforts. It's going to be a lot more, sink or swim kind of, but that's just speculation.
So some of the grocers that have already really gotten a jump on this with really the help of Repositrack. Repositrack has a role in a lot of these. I mean, Hy-Vee is deep into it. Associated Grocers is deep into it. Save a Lot, even Save a Lot has gotten a start on it. And
Wow.
Kroger, those are some of the bigger names that are already into it. That leaves a lot of grocers that really have not started it.
Right, right. I'm sure there are plenty out there who were kind of, you know, crossing their fingers and hoping and praying that this wouldn't go through when it did, because it was supposed to take effect in January. That's not a lot of time. That's not a lot of time, especially if you're not started yet.
So here is the paper or plastic question of the podcast. Will the deadline extension, how will it make a difference? One way or the other? Tim, how do you think it's going to make a difference one way or the other?
Um, I think that it will largely make a difference in terms of the upcoming presidential election. I mean, it's gonna be election season, and I've still been scratching my head trying to figure out why is 2.5 years the magic number. So I think we'll be talking about this again, but I think that ultimately, if the vision for this does come to fruition, it's going to be a good thing. You know, I mean, there will be fewer recalls. Those recalls will be more isolated to maybe individual stores or individual regions. There'll be a lot less waste. I think it's just a matter of whether or not you can get there from here. And I do very much believe that AI is going to play a major role in this going forward.
Yeah, I think give technology another 2 years. They're going to pull off some great stuff. And like you said, going to make it more affordable and it's going to make it easier. But I still don't think they're going to be ready come 2028. I think there's going to be strides made and I think they're going to be getting there, but I can see it being pushed to 2030.
Or even being, altered. I suspect that it's going to change. That's one of the things the FDA said is we're not going to change it. We'll see about that. I think that this is still up for debate, and there's probably going to be some more twists and turns before we hit 2028.
We are Grocery Guys. For Tim Inkelbarger, I'm Bill Wilson. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great day.